I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, December 4th, 2017 to order. First order of business is Pledge of Allegiance. Charles, would you lead us in that, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Charlie. Item number 2, public forum. Public forum at the beginning of the meeting is limited to 3 minutes regarding any agenda item. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board in public forum?
I'm not sure if it would be new business or old business. It's about the not pines topic.
That would be at the end of the meeting. Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, no. Apologies not necessary. And by the way, I'm new to this too. At least this forum. But it's consistent. Public forum at the end of the meeting is regarding any issue. It's regarding any issue. So, item 3, and that is 3.1, accepting the minutes of the November 20th, 2017 regular meeting. Unfortunately, this board will only be able to accept them, not approve them, because we do not. There was only one member who was in attendance as a Board of Selectmen member. Charlie, is there anything on here, however, that you would like to correct for the record?
No. I don't know. What, do we just accept them at this point?
I think so. I had a couple of items. I think you probably did too, but go ahead.
I just wanted to comment that at 4.2, Ms. Mazza should be Mr.
Mr. Mazza, right. And then I also had on 5.1 is Daniel Avenue Creek IAL or IEL? I think it's
Yes,
IEL, right? Any others?
I had a question more than a comment or clarification.
Okay.
Item 14, I was actually at the meeting. It went into executive session. I'm just curious when we would get briefed on what occurred at that point. It's involving land purchase.
Good question. Over the next day or so, I will be having some conversations with some of the players who participated in that, and I would suggest that it would also wind up being an executive session for this board to discuss anything that was discussed during that session. Okay. But the land on that land purchase, I am familiar with the items, the specific item and the parcel of property, and at this point it's not for disclosure in the public arena, but we can certainly update you on that moving forward.
Fair enough, thanks.
There was one small typo on number 13. I think getting water to 3 communities, I believe, through the Mulberry Point Water Project, not thought.
Yep. Any others? All right. We're accepting them as amended. Item 4, and that's presentation regarding energy performance contracting. And Cliff is here with Aldo Mazza. Excuse me if I blow this. Mazzaferro and Aaron Alibrio. How did I do? Well, I have a 4-letter last name that people butcher all the time. So. Want to come on up, Cliff? You want to give a little overview? Just a quick overview for those in the audience. This has been a long-standing project regarding energy performance contracting. It's my understanding that recently the Board of Education passed along unanimously a motion to move the bid process for the financing of this project, owing in large measure to the fact that the tax bill being considered and most recently approved by the Senate in Washington contains a provision that eliminates the tax credits, the pass-through tax credits to the companies who actually own the assets during the lease process. Is that correct? Okay. Enough of a lead-in?
So, again, Cliff Gurnham, Director of Operations for the Guilford Board of Ed. I've been involved with this for about 3 years now. We looked at a couple different options for energy performance for the district, and we found this energy performance contracting actually through the state of Connecticut. They have a program that allows us to do this. I went to several seminars with the state. And after those seminars determined that it would be in the best interest of the district to actually hire a consultant that does this full-time, since I did not have the experience, nor did anyone from the town. So we went out and did an RFP and ended up hiring ECG, who's presently our consultant, to oversee this project and help us through the process. So what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Aldo, who's from ECG, that has been working with us for the last several years on putting this together.
Thanks, Cliff. So my company specializes in this work, doing only owner's rep services to manage these EPC, energy performance contracting projects, on behalf of towns, school districts, municipalities, to basically ensure the project is a success. And we've used our standard scope of services here to assist you in doing that. And at this point, we're looking forward to actually executing the contract to move forward with building this project. Now, as Cliff said, we've been working together probably for about 2 years on this. We did preliminary studies. We ran a request for proposals process to actually solicit energy services companies like Johnson Controls to come in and competitively audit your facilities and come up with self-funding energy performance contracting proposals. We worked with the Standing Building Committee to review those proposals, and ultimately Johnson Controls was selected through that process. That was probably in about summer, about 12 months ago, probably a little more. Since that time, Johnson Controls has worked on what's called a detailed energy audit. This is a DEA for short, meaning they took their request for proposal, energy performance contracting initial proposal, and embellished on it, meaning they looked into detailed site-specific data, how the buildings operate, what the set points are, essentially looking for every opportunity to save energy in order to build a self-funding scope to address needed capital upgrades that were given by the Standing Building Committee and from Cliff based on different needs in the facilities, things like boilers, building temperature controls, windows, all these things that are very costly items that are on the 5-year capital plan to be replaced in the future. This EPC project is built and molded by the town to address those items and fund them so that the tax base doesn't have to foot the bill on those. You continue, it's funded out of your existing energy bill. So if you spend $1 million today, essentially this project could save 20%. That's $200,000 in guaranteed annual savings from Johnson Controls that the town can then reallocate to fund these items like windows and boilers that are very costly and generate some energy savings, but this is one turnkey project to do that. So in about the spring of 2016, Johnson Controls produced what's called that detailed energy audit. My company, as your owner's rep, did a detailed review of that audit, again looking at technical, financial, cost savings, what the economic impact is of specific upgrades, making sure that they're accounting for specific items like hazardous materials, things like that, essentially to make sure that your project, once the contract is executed, it'll flow very smoothly and the savings will continue to generate and be a successful project for the town. After that process, the various boards chose to commission a third-party engineering firm, I believe Kohler Ronan, who the town has some experience working with. They did another detailed study, a third-party review, to make sure, again, that this was in the best interest of the town. Ultimately, through that process, they issued a letter approving the project, just like my company did as well. So over the last several months or so, we've been updating the various boards, bringing everyone up to speed, and which brings us to today here to update the new elected members of the Board of Selectmen to ultimately recommend that on December 18th, which I believe would be the next Board of Selectmen meeting, to execute the contract once the RFP for financing comes in, to move forward with ultimately building this project in time to secure 2 major sources of funding in the project, one of which is what's called Certified Renewable Energy Bonds, CREBs for short. These are worth over $1 million to the town over the life of the project. And again, that funding source is helping to fund things like the windows and the boilers that are costly to upgrade and are documented needs in the facilities. Another important funding source that we're looking to secure for the town is what's called zero renewable energy credits, ZRECs for short. These are essentially an annual funding source for installing a solar array, what it generates. Again, it is worth over $1 million to the town, and it's going to help fund those high, costly capital items. So this is an essential, very critical time period here, because you need to have the solar array operating by April of 2018. And of course, certified renewable energy bonds, the CREBs, will expire if the contract is not executed by the end of the year. So those two pieces are very valuable to the town as a funding source. So we're here to communicate the urgency here to move forward, and we're looking forward to working with the town. So if you have any questions on those specific items.
Thank you, Aldo. I think most of us on this board have participated in at least one or several presentations, which is why I should have had your name right from the start. But and I understand that did the Board of Education at its most recent meeting, did it pass the resolution or approve the entire project, or just going out to RFP? The entire project. Okay. Charlie, your perspective on where the board was, the Board of Selectmen was regarding this?
Well, we were waiting to, Board of Ed was the primary leader in this. So, now I didn't realize that they had, approved the entire project.
Right.
And, obviously what you're talking about today, the timeline for the end of the year, that becomes very real. Other than that, we, basically had just, had the presentations. The logic was that if the Board of Ed had vetted it completely and approved it going forward, unless we had more specific questions, I think that's where we stood. We didn't really, pursue it, waiting for the Board of Ed's decision.
Board of Ed's. The bulk of the savings, I understand, are going to come on the Board of Ed side. Is that ratio? 80-20, 70? 80-20. There were also some questions regarding how do we allocate, there were some questions, how do we allocate, the costs of this project and then the associated savings. I understand that those have been alleviated between discussions between the respective finance directors at the Board of Education and Mary Jane. Is that correct? Okay.
The only other question, there were some legal questions that, in-house counsel Pam, was going to review. I don't know if you've gone any further at this point.
I asked Jeff D'Onofrio, outside counsel who had familiarity with these type of performance contracting in North Haven. He worked with them. So he reviewed in a lot of detail, negotiation back and forth, the Johnson Control contract that you will have before you in the next meeting. Yeah. So I believe that the concerns are being addressed in that way. I know, there's just some T's to cross with the solar. There's still solar panels in the project. So we currently have a electricity contract, and there's notice requirements within that. So we have to be aware of that electricity contract and how that interplays with the solar panels. It's just one of the things to just keep track of.
Do you have optimism that by our next meeting, most of these issues will be sorted, or at least we'll have a response that we can decide on?
Yes. No, I mean, in fact, Jeff, I think there's been some last changes.
Sure. So just to comment on the contract, back in June, ECG, D'Onofrio, and the school board as well had worked out what we call the clean contract, which was approved. And there's just two changes that are being made. One is that the town hall south boiler, so some scope cost and savings are being removed, and then there's one solar that's being funded through a different method up at the State Department for your reimbursement. So those two things have been changed and altered, sent back to your council for approval. ECG has already seen that and approved from the costing.
Those were Board of Ed questions, though. Have Board of Ed questions been addressed, Pam? Or are being addressed?
I had to go back and review the minutes of that meeting with former
Because
board.
there were some questions that, at the Board of Selectmen level, that were different than the Board of Ed questions. I think they were more, the financing structure and how it interplays with the capital program and that type of thing, so.
I think it might be helpful to suggest that, Jeff D'Onofrio maybe attend the 18th meeting so that he could give you a little bit of.
Well, yeah, we don't want to, considering the time constraints, we might not want to wait to that point. At least alert him to, all the questions that came up at that Board of Selectmen's meeting, resolve them, or if not resolve them, at least have opinions so that we can make a decision, that type of thing, and maybe alert him to the new timeline. I mean, we didn't have this timeline constraint a few months ago.
I'll talk with you later to just kind of refresh where we were at that, because that was several months ago, and then also look at the minutes. I'll talk.
Right. If I could, I'm sure the minutes from that Board of Selectmen meeting will reflect the questions. Was there a separate document prepared as a result of those of that meeting with questions forwarded, or is it?
I don't think, no, because it was really a discussion at that point, because like I said, we were primarily relying on the Board of Ed to be the leader in this project.
That was a question that I had. You said it's 80-20, so I'm presuming 80% of the buildings are school under the jurisdiction of the Board of Ed and yourself?
Yeah, square footage is really what it comes down to. Although we only have 7 schools, they're obviously much larger than the town. So yes, that's why it balances out that way.
Who's going to be supervising the 20%, which I presume are other town-owned buildings?
Yep, Steve Nydorf has been involved with the process and been working with ECG and Johnson Controls on the projects on the town side. So he's aware of all the projects and everything else and has reviewed them. Yes.
Okay.
And I have an item.
Lou?
And I guess it goes to Pam as well. One of the things I'd be interested in hearing from Mr. D'Onofrio is the mechanism by which the guarantees operate. Okay, I'm sure, and you guys were kind enough to come to the Board of Finance when we were there, and I heard it, and it's moved forward. We just need a refresher on that. That's the part that I guess make sure I want to hear and understand.
And I do remember there were concerns about roof warranties and solar penetrations. I don't know whether you're able to address that off your head.
Well, all of the solar installations go back to the manufacturer, who then approved the warranty from the methods and means of application. So it's standard practice in the solar industry. These things will be, the warranty will be actually owned by us when we're in construction, like a typical, because we'll have all the bonding in place. So should some sort of an accident happen, then we would pay and replace and repair that. But everything goes smooth, which it normally does, then the manufacturer will sign off after their inspection, and the warranty will continue as stated.
I'll address that with Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
It wasn't only warranties in the roofing. We wanted to make sure that if upgrades to the roofing were required to enable us to put solar panels on them, we wanted to know whose responsibility that was going to be, I think, also.
I'm not sure I heard the entire
It was not only an issue of warranties of existing roofing structures. The question came up of whether or not any upgrades to the roof, stress and weight bearing and that type of thing, if any of that type of thing had to be done, whose responsibility was it, and is it in part of the process?
Sure, so part of the process is a full structural analysis before the installation of the solar panels. So long as your structure meets that, then that scope of work would go forward. But should that structural analysis prove to be inadequate, then we would talk to you certainly about the benefits of adding.
It's that talk to you, question.
Well, we have not quite frankly, we had not costed any improvements to the structural and viability of the roof.
We just wanted that defined in the document.
Yep.
And just, of course, a little speculation, but, most of our roofs are relatively new, as most of you are aware. You also may be aware that we put steel superstructures over several of the buildings. So places like Melissa Jones and Guilford Lakes have a steel superstructure versus a standard wooden structure that, from originally built building might have. So based upon that, from my view, I feel that we'll be in a pretty good position moving forward with these solar panels based upon just knowing the structure of the existing buildings as they are built now. So, but again, we will have a professional structural engineer review all the buildings prior to construction and in the design periods.
That review is part of the contract?
Yes.
Anything further? No? Thank you, gentlemen. We appear to be nearing, getting closer to the resolution.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5, discuss and take possible action on adopting a resolution regarding the designation of banks as depository for the town. Mary Jane, you just want to give us a little brief understanding of why we're signing, what we're signing, and are we signing away our firstborn children with this, or what's the routine?
The town designates Webster Bank, Guilford Savings Bank, the Connecticut Short-Term Investment Fund, U.S. Bank, and Wells Fargo as depositories of the town's funds. Okay. Anytime we have a change or we withdraw, write checks, it does require 2 signatures of the Board of Selectmen and myself. So as such, all of you are asked to approve these banks and to affix your signature as such.
Question. Typical process on availability of people to sign. Could one day Sue, Lou, and yourself decide that we want to do something?
We have through our financial software electronic signatures. Mr. Haverda has been asked to be that 3rd signature as a selectman, so it would, at the moment, would be yourself, Mr. Haverda, and myself as signers. In case we need something over and above that, the others may be asked to do so.
Good. Do you need a single document with our signatures on these, or one from each?
A single document.
Okay, we'll do that at the conclusion of the meeting.
That'd be fine.
Great.
Can I ask why these 5? I know these are the banks that you use now, but if you found there was a better investment opportunity elsewhere, we would just go through this again, I suppose.
Correct, yes, and that's going to be one of the things I'm looking for in the future, to invest our funds differently. I haven't been able to give my attention to that in the past year, but it's certainly something I'm looking to do. There are some good opportunities even within these banks that I've seen recently, but I would come back to you for permission to use a different bank in a similar fashion.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Is there?
One follow-up question on that. So I presume these are what we've been using up to this
Correct.
point? So these are the 5 we're using now?
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
Matt, the only other point, I know I can sign these because I have in the past, but I do want to note it for the record that I am a trustee of Guilford Savings Bank.
Understand. Thank you for that clarification.
And I am too.
There you go. That shouldn't limit your capacity to do that, though. Has it
No,
in the past?
no.
This is just for the record.
Normally, I have the signature for the other banks.
Okay.
Just do it.
You got it. All right. All right. Does someone want to make a motion on the resolution, the 3 resolutions in front of us? And I'll beg the board's indulgence to waive the entire reading. We all have a copy of it here. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? None? Thank you. We'll sign this at the conclusion of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6, that would be consider and take possible action to authorize the first selectman to sign an agreement with the state for a grant toward the purchase of wheelchair-accessible motor vehicle for the elderly disabled. Rick, we've all been presented information regarding this project, but if you wouldn't mind giving a brief review for those in the audience and those who will be watching on GCTV.
Sure. Well, thank you. And first of all, congratulations to all of you for being elected. And I heard somebody say something about a slogan. It should be called Matt Matters. But anyway, so the previous Board of Selectmen has approved the the grant application, we had to purchase a bus through the state. We have 4 buses, and we're due to replace one of them. We have money in this current budget approved by the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance of $16,000 for the town's share. But the agreement that's in front of you is now the agreement, and the terms of the agreement that has to be signed by the First Selectman to go ahead and go forward with the actual purchase of the vehicle. And Terry, I don't know if there's any specific information about, rides or how much we use it, but the bus has been approved, it's in the budget, and now it's just an agreement for you to sign, Matt, that says, okay, let's go forward and do this now.
Good. We have currently have 3 vehicles, I believe, 3 buses. Is that?
We have 4 buses and the van, right?
4 buses in the van,
Yeah.
and the older ones are currently at $119,000, $87,000, $81,000. Will we be retiring any of the older ones or keeping all of them operational?
Well, I think we have the option. In the past, the fire department had a need for a bus, so we gave them one of our older buses, and I think they expressed maybe some interest in the bus that we have.
Okay.
I mean, is it usable for, a few times a year that somebody might use it for the regular transportation we have? The old rules were that when we used to go through the Greater New Haven Transit District, and they no longer are involved in this bus business, was that they had to be traded in after 75,000 miles or 7 years, I think. And we're at 119,000 now.
Right. Any other questions?
Can you talk a bit about the growth of the program and the increased use of the bus and what you see in the future?
The growth, Terry, you can address that better.
Well, last year we drove about 50,000 miles. We put on the buses, and every year it's growing. It's starting to level out a little bit, but there was a large period of time there where it grew, I think 23% one year. The bus is available for seniors within town for doctor appointments, hair appointments, coming here to the community center, errands, that type of thing. And then we will go out of town only for medicals. We go as far as the VA in West Haven to the west, and to the east we go as far as Westbrook. We have 8 drivers on staff, and the bus runs pretty much flat out, 2 to 3 a day, from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, except Wednesday we end at 2, but we may have to look at extending that sometime too. Grocery shopping 2 days a week, we pick up approximately 12 seniors and take them for an hour of grocery shopping. So it's a service that's available to keep people active in the community. Some people have given up their license, and they would be stuck in their homes if we weren't able to get them out.
Yeah, I believe the medical rides, too, that's one of the areas that has increased a lot in the last few years.
Any other questions? Okay. Is there a motion to allow or authorize the First Selectman to sign the agreement for this purchase?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
Any further questions or comments? Call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? No. Carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I might note for the record, this is the information we got from Rick Maynard. This is the contract with the state, which is, what, about 30 pages? Item 7, discuss and take possible action to authorize the First Selectman to award bid number 4-1718, diesel fuel number 2 heating oil and unleaded gasoline after bids are received at 9:30 a.m. on December 7th. Pam?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Every year we go out to bid for the fuels, and because of the volatility of the market, the bidders only hold their price for 1 hour. So this is why we are seeking authority for the First Selectman to award the bid within that hour. I think Cliff Gurnham is here to acknowledge he will attend the bid opening, as well as Matt, as well as perhaps the finance director. We'll receive the bids, we'll go over them, and the First Selectman is authorized on behalf of the Board of Ed as well to award the bids. And then what usually occurs is we sign the contract within a couple of hours after the bid award, and then I'll send a memo to the board members to give you the amounts, et cetera. And I know Matt
We normally do this in November, and the reason that has historically taken place, November, early December, is so that the departments have more accurate budget figures. But that's something for you all to consider going forward. You know, it may make sense, regardless of that point, to go out to bid at a different point during the year. I think Matt said late summer, just try to secure better pricing.
Right.
So we'll keep that in mind for the summer.
Good.
Yeah.
Move it up. Any questions? No? Thank you, Pam. Is there a motion to authorize the first selectman to award bid number 4-1718?
So moved. Second.
Any further questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? No. Thank you, Pam. Consider and take possible action on an election of member who shall preside in the absence of disability of the first selectman in accordance with Town Charter 3-2B. I would ask that this board support my recommendation that Lou Federici be delegated as that member who shall preside in the absence or disability of the first selectman. I'll put it in the motion. Second. Any other motions? Good. On the question itself, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? Congratulations, Lou.
Thank you.
Discuss and take possible action on the appointment of the clerk to the Board of Selectmen in accordance with Town Charter, Section 3.5. I have it on good authority that Tracy Brinkman has agreed to continue in that role. Is there a motion to appoint Tracy Brinkman? Is there a second?
Second.
I'm not even going to ask if there are other nominations. Call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Yeah, sorry, Tracy. Opposed, none. Abstentions, none. Recusals, none. Congratulations, Tracy. And Tracy, you're going to, well, with the exception of Charles, you have the most experience on this board. Probably more than Charles. More, that's right. Exactly. Discuss and take possible action on the appointment of tree warden for the town of Guilford in accordance with Section 23-58 of Connecticut General Statutes. And I am going to recommend that Kevin McGee be named to that position. And I'm putting that in the form of a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I guess we're a one-year term.
It's a one-year term. Thank you for that clarification. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? None. Consider and take action on the appointment of town council in accordance with Town Charter 5.5. I have had some discussions and am prepared at this point to make a recommendation that Peter Barrett be appointed as town council in accordance with Town Charter Section 5.5. The first concern that both Attorney Barrett and I had was, were there any conflicts with his current role as judge of probate for Madison and Guilford? To alleviate those concerns, Pete submitted a request to the Office of Probate Court Administrator in West Hartford, actually, seeking guidance on that, and the opinion came back as no, there is no conflict. If in the potential, the only thing that he would be prohibited from doing would be to represent the town in a matter before his own court, the probate court, which would be a pretty interesting scenario. He's going to argue with himself in court. But I have asked Pete, and he has accepted it based on this. Pete also has requested or suggested that he will submit a request for review by the town of Guilford's Board of Ethics as well. I'm not sure that there's going to be, I don't think there's going to be a conflict there. Pam doesn't think there's a conflict. And Pete, while it might be self-serving, doesn't think there's a conflict with the town code of ethics as well. So I would greatly appreciate your consideration of the appointment of Pete Barrett as town council in accordance with Town Charter Section 5.5, and I'd like to put that in the form of a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any questions or comments? One thing, go ahead. I was just
Well,
going to
the
make
other
a
point I made
clarification.
is, I've worked with Peter in the past, and I think it's a very wise choice.
Excellent.
Not that there's anything wrong with
The current
existing.
Exactly. And just so folks are at ease, we're not tossing over any of the current representation that we have on ongoing litigation or negotiations. Those that are currently engaged on our behalf will continue through the resolution of the engagements. And it also does not mean that they may not be considered for future engagements. And it is Pam, Peter and I are trying to find time tomorrow to sit down to take a look at the open cases, open items, and then how we work this, because we're sort of in a unique situation. We have great capacity in-house with Pam as in-house counsel, and Pam has limitations that in areas that she is not comfortable with, and that's when we need to use outside counsel. So, with that, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? None. Thank you. Okay. Discuss and take possible action on appointment of the Flood and Erosion Control Board in accordance with Chapter 42 of the Town Code. For the record, the Flood and Erosion Control Board traditionally consists of the entire Board of Selectmen. Congratulations, we may have another meeting to go to. Town Engineer, Public Works Director, and Fire Chief. So, at this point, we need to appoint ourselves to that control board. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Seconded. Any questions or is it a 2-year term? That's it. Pam was just.
You said 10.
And Charlie Hirschat. So the entire board has to be reappointed now? Okay. Just the Board of Selectmen has to be appointed at this point. Okay. Right. Okay. The entire thing. It doesn't say that in this document. All right. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further questions, comments? Hearing none. Move the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? None. Item 13. Consider and take possible action on proposed 2018 schedule. We have it here before us. The traditional scheduling of the Board of Selectmen meetings is the first and third Monday of every month. Meetings will take place at 8:30 in the Guilford Town Hall. There are some exceptions to that, those being holidays that fall on a Monday. The document we have in front of us suggests that those would be a problem on the first and third Monday of January, the third Monday of February. And I believe there's also on the 18th should be fine, Charlie. It's 2 weeks after the 4th, so you and I were talking earlier. Before we put a resolution together, there had been some discussion during the campaign about the possibility of, and this was throughout the community, that the possibility of moving these meetings to a time that created greater accessibility for the public. I intend to move forward with this meeting schedule, but I will be bringing back to this board an item for discussion about possibly changing meeting times and dates to, and after some review, to ensure or to attempt to attract greater participation and involvement by the community. Understanding fully well that may create some hardships for some folks in town government, including some of our employees, but I think it is worth the discussion. It is a discussion that took place in this community over the past several months, and I think it warrants further discussion. There's also a concern, and Charlie, we can, this is okay to talk about this in public, right? Charlie has a conflict on some of those Tuesdays.
I have the same
so
one.
we might, and Sandy has the same one. So those who are reading between the lines, they're going to the same meeting. But I think we can work to adjust those to a mutually agreeable time after we approve this. Does that make sense?
Works.
Works for you? Is there a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen 2018 meeting schedule?
I'll make that motion, Matt.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? Thank you. Thank you. Lou, this is a lot faster to get through the agenda than the meetings we used to attend.
I'm trying not to blame the Board of Ed for that.
Item 14, act on resignation received from Colin McKenzie from the Green Committee. Is there a motion to accept the resignation of Colin McKenzie from the Green Committee?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? None. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? None.
With regret and thanks.
With regret, and thank you very much, Sandy. Item 14.2, act on resignation received from John Henningsen from the Advisory Committee, Advisory Joint Committee, which services both Madison and Guilford, I believe. Is there a motion?
So moved with regret.
And thanks. Second on that?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Act on appointment of Fred Brisbois to the Veterans Advisory Joint Committee to fill a vacancy for a term to expire December 31st, 2019. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any comments, questions? None? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well. Item 14.4, act on recommendation to approve Sean Ackrey to the Standing Building Committee to fill a vacancy for a term to expire June 17th, 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Before we call the question, for those in the viewing audience, the Standing Building Committee is woefully understaffed. I think this brings them to 4 members. On a committee that I think is 7 or 9, is it, Charlie? I can't remember exactly what it was. It was at least 7, right?
It's been a problem just getting the quorum. Yeah.
It's 7? Thank you very much, Mary Jane. So this is an appeal to those in the viewing audience and perhaps to the members of the Fourth Estate that we need folks who have some expertise in building, construction, et cetera, to serve on that committee. The 3 members asked myself and Ken McKenzie during the campaign season to come in and talk to us about the situation they are in, and it is unfair that the burden that they're carrying, the 3 of them. This makes it a little bit easier, but we could still use 3 more. So if you have the talents or want to learn, I'm sure some of those folks will help you, but we could use your assistance. Call the question on the appointment of Sean Ackrey. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? None. 14.5, act on appointment of Elise Lowe to the Cable Advisory Council of South Central Connecticut to fill a vacancy for a term to expire June 30th, 2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Yeah, wait, just explain to me what the role of that board is.
Would you handle that?
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you,
a
Pam.
statutory creation by statute. I'll circle back to you.
Okay. Thank
Thank you.
you. And just by further question, is by coincidence, is that going to be related to one of our other agenda items?
No, not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, because we are being asked to consider some cell phone tower issues, and that board is not related to that?
Not to my knowledge.
Oh, this is GCTV.
Okay. Okay.
This is Cable Advisory, not Selectmen.
Okay, thanks.
Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, recusals? No. Item 15. 15.1 is act on a request from the Shabbat Lubavitch of the Shoreline to place a Hanukkah menorah on the green from December 10th through the 24th, 2017. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Comments, questions, et cetera? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, recusals? None.
I have a procedural question about that. Before we're asked to vote,
Yep.
does that request go through someone at Town Hall to make sure that, this is not about this particular application at all, but just in general, I mean, I wouldn't know if someone had used the green before and didn't clean it up or whatever. Is there okay, and someone signs off on it?
Right, and there are applications that they actually fill out and sign.
I saw.
Yeah. And we'll get familiar with these things one at a time, I think, right?
Exactly.
And I think this is what, not that we're...
Certain times of the year, this list can take up substantially greater. And Gary initiated the tradition of just listing them all because they have been vetted usually.
Okay.
Rarely do we have a question on the sign.
You know, it would be helpful for us if there was a sign-off or something.
I think at
so
some
we
point,
know, I guess.
the issue of all the signs at the head of the green may or may not pop up for a philosophical discussion, but not normally on individual signs.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good question, Sue. 15.2, and that is to act on a request from Shabbat Lubavitch of the Shoreline to use the green and to place a sign on the green advertising its Jewish festival taking place August 5th, 2018. Sign placement to include 7/22 to 8/5/2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? None. Okay. Item 16, correspondence. I don't think we had any correspondence. We do have something in here which looks like correspondence from Robinson Call, but it pertains to item 19 on the agenda. Committee reports. Charlie, at this point, I'm not familiar with any of the committees that need to report to us. At one point, I think the land acquisition was related to the purchase.
Well,
Potential purchase.
Yeah, that'll be. Normally, what had been done in the past, each of us had taken a committee or a commission and kind of, that was our thing. Okay. And if there was something particular to bring to the attention, we would do that. We could do that at a future time. If there's particular committees or commissions that's near and dear to each one of us, we can kind of say, okay, we'll attend or keep an eye on those and report back.
That's kind of what I thought it was. Thank you for that clarification. So why don't we be prepared for the December 18th meeting to volunteer to spend another night or two out of the house, particularly if there are commissions that you have an interest in. And then if we have conflicts, we'll draw lots. Old business. Does anybody have any old business? None? New business. Item 19, which is a Selco small installation. Pam, you want to come up and give us a quick summary? I think we've got the documentation from Robinson and Cole, but Pam is going to fill us in.
This actually was also discussed with the former board when they received this correspondence, and we did meet with Matt to also show him the correspondence ahead of this meeting. This is I guess, a hot button issue in the state right now. Over a year ago, this is not this company, but a company called Mobility approached several towns trying to put 120-foot cement poles in the public right-of-way and bypassing the siting council, which is the state body that oversees cell tower locations. That led to litigation. CCM hired an attorney, Bert Cohen, from North Carolina to kind of intervene in some of those actions to express the concerns of the municipalities. So this is what is now seems to be occurring is that these companies are backing down off this notion of putting 120 feet cement poles in the public right-of-way and bypassing the siting council. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them attempt to do that, but go through the siting council now that they've kind of understand the laws here in Connecticut. But this initial step, their kind of backup plan is to take existing utility poles in the public right-of-way and install these, they're called small cell installations. Some of you know more about this than I, but it's for streaming and data. And the point is, though, that what's before you today is one company, Selco, doing business as Verizon, asking or saying they're going to install a small cell installation on one of the poles that's in the Guilford Green. And in going to some of the meetings, you'll note that there are other companies out there that you can't say yes to one and no to the other. So, you know, the big picture is picture multiple installations on a pole is a potential. In this particular situation, Pura is the governing body on the existing poles installation, not the siting council. And the towns do have certain rights, only because CCM hired outside counsel to make sure we got some rights. And this is one of the rights with this letter is for us to respond within 30 days of November 7th, so today, tomorrow, that, you know, we want to be noticed on all the proceedings. We may want to object. Matt and Joe met and kind of jointly decided that to hire Bert Cohen to kind of guide us with this first request, especially because we're very sensitive to it being located on the town green. Bert and I met briefly at the site. It was his opinion that at first he thought we might have a legitimate objection because it's in a historical area of town. He did a little research on that and did not think that the law favored us in being able to avoid having the installation. But he recommends that basically he would write a letter on his letterhead, knowing that these companies understand that he's been very much an advocate against these, and suggest that the representative meet with the town and Matt and discuss possibly, you know, moving it off the green. And again, from going to some meetings on this, there seems to be some flexibility there. It's not just this one pole, and if it's not on this pole, the data's lost or whatever. So there seems to be an ability to at least kind of come up with a compromise. And, you know, it may be that you may decide it is important with this first one to kind of set the tone, because we don't know where this will go from there.
Questions?
So really, it's, I think we'll be sending a letter.
The letter goes out from Bert, right? If it hasn't already, right? I mean,
We held off until we notified the board.
Okay. I don't think the board needs to act in totality.
No, you don't need to act,
right.
just
So Bert will be issuing that letter on our behalf. I did have the same questions about historic district. My assumption is that this is going to be an issue in communities all around the state, which is why CCM has engaged Bert on their behalf as well. I'm wondering whether or not this has risen to the level of legislative attention, but I certainly will bring it to Sean, Ted, and Vin to see if it's on their radar screen or anybody else's radar screen statewide, to take a look at Pura's apparent willingness to let them do it, regardless of community input. I think one of the things that's important here, it is not a viable objection to use aesthetics.
It's true.
So,
or safety, because that's not part of our process either.
Right. Well, I think there was something in here. Safety. It's been vetted by all of the national safety order that it's not going to create, you know, negative brain waves or whatever on people. It's traditional cellular service
or
small
with any other
or others.
Communications.
Right. So.
Well, I like the idea of working proactively with them to try to find a better alternative instead of just, you know, saying no and seeing where it goes.
Good.
We do have to stay on it, though, because of the initial cement or poles or whatever. I mean, those would be very problematic on the green or in most neighborhoods. I mean, the pictures that we have before us, at first glance seem fairly innocuous, but I just don't know how tall. I mean, you can't tell if this is an extra 10 feet on top or if it's just attached to the top of the existing pole. And those are the kinds of things, to Sue's point, that we have to stay ahead of it and be part of the solution, not part of...
And actually, Bert said this particular request it's a 9-foot increase in the size of the pole.
That's pretty.
So, you know, something.
Yeah,
to
a
pay
30 or
attention
40-foot pole.
Right.
25%.
And you would notice that. I mean, you would know. It would tower over buildings.
Great.
Right.
All right, thank you. Does any other board member have any new business they want to talk about? No? All right, item 20, public forum, limited to 3 minutes regarding any issue. We've got at least one. The routine's the same as it is most places, most meetings. Name and address for the record.
Yes.
And then your comments, please.
Thank you. So I just want to pass these out. So, my name is Liz O'Connor, and I'm here representing the group of Guilford residents opposed to the proposed Nut Plains pathway, one of whom is my mother, who resides at 657 Nut Plains Road. And I'm hopeful that the cameraman can focus on on the opposition's document. It's the same document I've just given to all members of the board. So in the interest of time, I'll not read the entire document. However, I will provide you with some of the key statements and concerns. What the group stands for is protecting Guilford's historic and cultural landscape, ensuring safe and efficient roads, protecting the rights of the residents. Some of the questions are, is the proposed Nut Plains pathway a reasonable proposal? Is it the right thing to do? Is it the smart thing to do? Do the goals reflect the town goals? Does it reflect civic goals? The key concerns are the democratic process, leadership and judgment goals, safety goals, civic responsibility goals, community character goals, historic goals, natural history goals, and engineering goals. We at the Nut Plains Pathway Opposition thank you for your time and look forward to talking to you in the near future. You'll be hearing from us soon and often. If there are anyone in the audience who would like a copy of this, they're underneath the basketball hoop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your input. Is there anyone else wishing to address the board? Public forum? Hearing none, I'll entertain the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I'm not asking for...
Congratulations, Matt. Great job for this meeting.
Thank you very much, Charlie, for your help. Thank you all. Congratulations. Thank you.